Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us for what is sure to be a fascinating and inspiring conversation with two talented artists discussing their artwork. We have Axel Breutigam and JanaLee Cherneski here with us to talk about the exhibition that just opened up at the Meek Arts Center here in West Vancouver. It's called Beyond Botanicals, and we'll get to meet them in just a moment. My name is Stephen Snyder. I'm the Gallery and Communications Manager for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all here to this conversation. Before we get started, I think we shall just take a moment to recognize that we are on the unceded and traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. It's a real privilege to be able to be here on these lands to celebrate all kinds of arts and culture with and alongside our host nations and neighbors. If you have any questions or comments for our fantastic artists, you can drop those in the chat and we will get to that throughout the conversation. Yeah, so Beyond Botanical, as we said, opened up at the Meek Arts Center, which is at 1700 Mathers Avenue here in West Vancouver. Please go check it out. The show is on until May 18th. You can drop by and visit the space to see all these lens-based works of art anytime during the week from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Or anytime on the evenings or weekends before a show or event happens at the Meek. So please check out their schedule, see all of the really great things they're doing, and find a time to go on and see this great exhibit. Beyond Botanical, as we said, features Axel and JanaLee, who are, we'll get a little bit more into it, but just a general overview. They're taking maybe overlooked subject matter, plants, vegetables, fruits, and shining a new light on them and hopefully offering us a new way to look at not only these subjects, but ourselves and the world around us. So let's start off by getting to know our artists. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. Axel, let's start off with you. Could you please tell us a bit about you?
So I hope I'm unmuted now.
Yeah.
You can hear me? Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for your kind words and your introduction. Also, thank you at the very beginning for all the work you did. You curated it, and it was the best thing. On Monday, I only had to drop off my artwork, and that was all I had to do. And I don't take that for granted because quite often, when you have a show, you have to hang your artwork yourself, right? And to be honest, I'm not the most handy guy. So I really appreciated that you did that. Thank you so much. Also, of course, thank you to our audience for tuning in and for joining us. A little bit about myself. I don't know, maybe we cannot see you. It's a little bit like TV, I guess. I've never been in a TV studio, but I guess that's the same situation. You have an audience you're talking to, but you can't see the audience, right? So anyway, I don't know how many people see us, and if there is one or another who already saw me in, I think we had in December our show with the Boulder guys, right? So anyway, I will give a few words about myself. I started photography when I was 16, a long time ago. That was in the 70s. And of course, I started with film, and I started with black and white film. Color film would have been an option, but I never was really a color guy. And a little bit later, when I was in my early 20s, I had my own little wet darkroom. So when you develop film by yourself and when you print it back then, the wet printing, actually black and white was the option. Color would have been possible, but color was way more difficult and also way more expensive. So I did black and white, and I always liked it. And even if I liked being a photographer, more as a hobby, but pretty serious at the time, I didn't choose to do it for a living. Instead, I decided to go to law school, and I also studied economics and became a lawyer and CPA. That was all in Germany, because from my accent, you can hear I'm not a born Canadian. I was born and raised in Hamburg, Germany. That's the northern part of Germany. I worked as a lawyer and CPA in Hamburg for almost 30 years. How did I come to Canada? My wife and our two children, my family, we visited Vancouver in 1996 for the first time. And yeah, we instantly fell in love with the city. And we visited a few more times afterwards. And finally, we made the decision to move to Canada. I sold my law firm. We sold all our other stuff, our house, our car, all that stuff, what you do if you change countries, and moved to Vancouver. That was in the early 2000s. I had a long transition, so with my law firm, so I had to go back and forth for almost 10 years. And I finally retired from the legal profession in 2010. And that was a time when I switched over to being, I would say, almost full-time photographer. You can see in the background, I also play music. Drums is my first instrument, bass is my second one. So it's not full-time photography. There's a lot of music going on as well, but I do it a lot. But I have to say, I'm very fortunate. I don't have to make a living with it, which is very important, because if you have to, I mean, JanaLee, you know that, right? Living from photography, it is possible, of course, but it gets more and more difficult. I guess if I had chosen it in the 70s to become a photographer, I could have made a living. Nowadays, with all the social media, with all the digital stuff going on, I think it gets more and more difficult. In particular, if you want to do what you like to do. Of course, you can be a wedding photographer, you can be on other assignments, but that's not really what I like to do. So, make it short, 2010, I retired, fully retired, and went to photography. I brushed up my skills a little bit by studying with Alan Ross. You guys probably won't know Alan Ross. He was the head assistant of Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams is probably a name many people know. He is I think, one of the most important black and white photographers, mostly landscape, but he does other stuff, or did other stuff too. He passed away in, I wrote it down. He passed in 19 something, 1984. So, and Alan was his head assistant, and he lives in Santa Fe, and I studied twice with him in Santa Fe, and that was good to really brush up all the skills. All black and white. So I never did color at that time, and within the last, let's say, 15 years, since 2010, I never did color. I did some color when photography was on the back burner, when I was working full-time as a lawyer and CPA. Of course, there was not much time for photography. It was just travel photos and family photos, and they were in color mostly. But my serious work is in black and white. Since 2010, I had quite a few exhibitions in Vancouver, in Calgary, Palm Springs, Portland, and also published 4 photo books, and I was lucky, some magazines featured my work, so I cannot complain. Even if as I said, I couldn't make a living out of it, but I'm happy with what I did and what I'm doing. And as I said, all black and white. And now it's a question, how do we come to color photography? I will answer that part. I will answer that question in the next part when we come to the artwork.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Axel, for sharing. It's a pretty interesting journey you've been on to get where you are.
It is.
JanaLee, could you please tell us a bit about you?
Sure. Hi, I'm JanaLee. I'm originally from Saskatchewan, but now I'm local here in West Vancouver. Although I also split my time between here and New York because love takes me across the border. My partner's American, and if I hadn't fallen in love, I wouldn't have fallen in love with the lake that I found where I took all these photographs as well. So a little bit about me. I am an artist, a writer, a facilitator, and a university professor sometimes, basically a teacher in all aspects. I say a lot that I try to imagine, I see the world as it is, or I see worlds as they are, and I imagine communities as they might be. And so in that gap, there's both a way of seeing what is, but also seeing what might be possible. And that's a thread that runs through my work, both as an artist, as a photographer, as a facilitator, as a teacher, all of those things. That's sort of the essence of what I care about at the core. So it's like working with what is and the potential of what might be, or just on the cusp. This is my very first show of my work. And this is a body of work I've been producing for the last 10 to 15 years. And I never set out to sort of make art or be a photographer in the sense of like producing objects. It actually is a project that grows out of just a very deep love of place, and connection and relationship to place. So it started as sort of me sitting on a dock at a lake where there are no motorized vehicles and there's a lot of really wonderful nature in summer, and wanting to be in relation to this place and all of the elements and all of the creatures and all of the beings there in the fullest sense of that. And so the first practice that I actually chose to do that was like just full immersion. So I swim every day in this lake, regardless of weather or temperature or my own mood, which I have to say, I'm not a big fan of, being cold and getting into a very cold body of water, but I do every day out of this sort of commitment and love. And swimming is a way of sort of full immersion. And then with it came a way of seeing. So suddenly under the water of this lake, there are these plants, which most neighbors sort of think about as weeds or nuisances, and are worried about in some ways also because if they're swimmers, they don't like the idea that there are water snakes there, which there are, and a variety of other things. But these plants have these wonderful leaves that sort of like dance in the water through all of the elements, and they decay throughout the course of the season that I'm there. And so I started taking photographs to sort of just study the life of the plants and the decay of the plants as they were going along the way. And so one of the fun things about, and it wasn't like, I'm using a very basic underwater camera, which actually is no longer produced, and I'm actually a little alarmed about because they're making cameras with better technology and better sort of focus and things like that. And I actually like a little bit of the analog fuzzy quality of what's happening with the way that I was taking pictures. But really, when I'm taking these photographs, I kind of feel like I'm co-creating with the elements that are around me. So the sun is lighting the photograph, and I can't position my subject. The water is moving all the time, and it's this kind of fleeting moments of sort of what's there in this sort of communication about what might be possible or what is in this fleeting moment you're seeing that you will never see again. I kind of feel like I'm more of an emissary of the sort of like of the life of the lake to people who might not be in the lake. And so I kind of feel like I'm in collaboration with all these other elements and energies beyond me. So that would be a little bit about me. I also do other things. I do multimedia art in other ways. So I'm actually playing right now with printing photographs of spaces on canvas and then painting over them and imagining, I'm calling it sacred life, and I'm printing very iconic public places and then painting energies that might be in those places rather than perhaps the energies we're used to experiencing in those places. So there's like a different set of works in process. But this is the first time I've really reckoned with this very large body of photographs I've taken in the lake. And I have immense gratitude to West Vancouver Community Arts Council, to Stephen, to Manzari, who is really helping put the exhibition together, because without that sort of nudge, oh, you can show your work, I probably never would have delved into this body of work and felt like I could honor it in the way that I think I'm very excited about doing right now. So much gratitude to you. And also to Axel for some of the mentorship I've gotten for him along the way as I've tried to figure out what it means to show your work as a photographer.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, JanaLee. And yeah, it's been a great process. For those of you who maybe don't know, how we put our exhibits together is we put out a call for artists, and we have a jury, and they go through all the submissions and they pair up people that they think would make up for a really strong show, and that sort of meets our mandate of supporting emerging and established artists here. And so we have Axel, who's fairly established, and JanaLee, who is emerging. And yeah, there's been some great conversations we've all had about what do you print something on? How big should it be? How much did you sell something for? You know, it's been a pretty interesting process getting to where we are right now. So I think next we're going to take a quick tour of the exhibit so everyone watching can have a bit of a taste for what to expect when you go and check it out. And remember, if you have questions or comments while you're watching anything or hearing anything anyone says, drop it in the chat. We have a hello from Saskia.
You know, Saskia.
Hi, Saskia.
Hey, so this is the Meek when you come into the main floor of the atrium at the Grosvenor Theatre. This is the view that you get. We start off, it's a beautiful space. We start off with some works here from Axel from his series. These really incredible colors. I know we're going to get to it eventually, Axel, how much you were talking about working in black and white and now color, and the colors that you have are fantastic. And then we move on to some photos from JanaLee, which have these wonderful senses of light. And I really recommend, you have to go see the show in person. This video is not doing these pieces justice. And then if you come downstairs to the McEwen Theater in the lobby there's even more artwork. So no matter what show you're coming to at the Meek, you'll have a chance to see everything. So we've got here some more pieces from Axel. You know, really interesting textures as well. And then some more work here from JanaLee. It's very I don't know, it was just our advisory panel did a great job because with your work, not only just your subject matter of being, sort of vegetation, you both have this great sense of space, even though in like Axel's, it's mostly just a black background, and generally sometimes there's not much of an indication of where you are. But I think there's a real presence to your pieces, like your subjects really feel like they're sitting in a world and just ready to burst off the page. So that is just a quick show, quick little tour of the exhibit. It's really lovely. It's all photography as mentioned above, but it's all displayed in a great way. You've all done printing and mounting on aluminum, so it's everything looks really clean and crisp and clear, and it's a beautiful presentation. So not only great work, but great style you both have.
Thank you.
So I think we're going to pull up, each artist has selected one of the pieces that's on display, and they're going to talk a little bit about it to give you all a bit more behind the scenes as to what they were thinking of when they were creating their artwork and maybe why they chose it, and just more insights into who they are as artists. Let's start with JanaLee. I'm going to pull up the piece that you chose. Excellent. Could you please tell us a bit more about this great work of art?
Okay. So this is titled K Series 1. One of the fun things about this, putting the show on and putting your work out for the first time, is I've had to think very clearly about sort of what works belong together in different series as well. And K Series is all about sort of oranges and apricots and bouquets of plants doing certain things in the lake. I chose this work because it has elements of everything else in it. So I may break down a little bit about what you're seeing because it's not always apparent right away. Although I'll say first, what was really fun is when we were hanging this, somebody walked by and we started talking about the photo. And I said, oh, you know, this is a photo that I took. And their first response was, this is a photograph? And I loved that response. So if I'm doing anything when I'm actually showing my work, I love eliciting that kind of sense of curiosity or that kind of wonder or that sense of surprise or that sort of connection with something in human beings, because I actually think it connects us to something that's very important inside us that we sometimes forget about as we're going through our daily sort of day-to-day commutes or things like that in the world. So if I manage to do anything as a photographer, if I can elicit that once or twice in people, I'll have succeeded, I think. So this is an underwater plant. I am free diving. So I'm holding my breath sort of mostly just below the surface of a lake. And the top fifth of this picture is actually a reflection. So as I'm taking plants that are sort of sticking out or looking up at the top of the lake, they reflect on the surface of the lake when I'm beneath the water, and the lake functions like a mirror. So it's reflecting the plant that you're seeing. And in this context, it's hard to tell that the water is moving, but you'll start to see the reflection being quite rippled. And if you want to start to figure out how the reflection is functioning, probably studying the stems at the bottom and the stems at the top help you orient how those reflections work. So you see this plant, and there's yellowing leaves. So I'm taking this closer to fall. You see these very lacy looking leaves. That's the veins of the leaf, as actually the leaf is sort of falling away from the plant, but it still has this sort of skeleton of a leaf that might be there. And what I love about this picture is that even while the plants are sort of decaying and at the end of their life, and that might be a sad note, although for me it's not, because I know they'll come back next year. So there's something about the cycle and the life cycle that's happening with the plant. At the same time, there's new life in this picture. And so if you look down on the lower left, you see this kind of fuzzy purple pinky tendril that's wrapped around the plant. And that, as it turns out, are a bunch of spotted salamander eggs that have wrapped their way around the plant and sort of found refuge there before they're going to hatch. And those are salamanders that when I'm in this place in fall, in spring, I'm actually helping the salamanders cross the road so that they don't get squashed. And it's a different activity of a different kind. So very much, again, being in relation with place and stewarding place, and letting place also steward you through the life that you're living. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of what's going on in this photo. And you'll see that there are actually eggs in a couple of the other photos in the exhibition. There's also a grounding photo to give you a sense of what the leaves looked like before they started to get decay. So there's a very green leaf, sort of strong plant photo, just to give you a bit of orientation to what might be happening. And then the rest is just sort of like how they happen to show up in the space that they're in, as you know, on the day of the wind and the water and the sun and the angle, which all changes very, very quickly in the environment that I'm working in. I guess the last thing you know, it's also fall because you see these other things that are stuck on the plant, which aren't in the other photos. So there's these kind of spiny things that have blown from somewhere else and ended up in the water and now stuck with the rest of the plant. So there's this conversation happening both with the plant life, but then each of these, there's this resonance and this kind of harmony between plant and sun and wind and all the other elements that sort of go into making a photograph like this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, no, it's I was there when that comment was made about, is it a photograph? Which, yeah, it was very cool. You said, which I didn't know, that you've been doing this for about 10 or so years. That's pretty impressive. Could you walk us through how you actually just moved from just diving into actually wanting to document and taking photographs?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even just imagine, it's hard to imagine not doing it now, to be very honest. It's just very much an integrated part of being in the place that I am. So often actually I would find a camera to be a distraction. So it's not my primary mode of being. I would write poetry. But I just spent so much time out in this place, and there's a poem that goes with the artist statement of this exhibition. It sort of gets to the idea that, look, like actually words are impossible to explain the relationships and the amazing sort of quality of being immersed in light in this way that happens when you're in this place. And so probably I thought that photography was a more appropriate medium for trying to capture some of that sort of swimming in this liquid version of light that you find if you're immersed in water. And the practice, I mean, as I said, it really just comes out of this deep desire to be in relation to all the things that are there to be in relation to. So it can be the snapping turtle that ends up like on our deck outside our door laying eggs when it comes out of the lake and then sort of like ploops back into the lake, and knowing that the water snake is there. I've got a picture of a water snake with its tongue above the surface, which is really cool. Or, you know, the porcupines that are climbing the trees outside our house and eating the plants that are like very wonderful, but then also being in relation to the plant life that's under the water and beneath the surface. So while I'm swimming, I'm seeing newts and I'm seeing spotted salamanders who hang out near their eggs until they hatch. And I'm seeing fish and I'm seeing other things. So there actually are a couple of pictures where there's shadows of fish. They're not hung on this exhibition. Selecting photos was a whole different drama that Stephen and I can talk about at some point. But it's just sort of, it was just a natural extension of both being in relation and wanting to communicate the joy and the wonder of that to people who might not get to experience it.
And an interesting thing about your work is we think of, photography. You have, a lot of the times you can have a lot of control over your environment and your elements. But it seems like in your process, in this body of work, there's no control.
Yeah, it's very much the opposite of control. But it's not being in control. It's about being open to being in relation to things that are bigger than yourself. So in this context, I can't really change where the sun goes, but then I can reposition my body, or, I have to keep my body quiet, or my body may make motion. And so there's a really deep, often we think about photography as sort of, how do you set your aperture or your f-stop or control light or position your subject? And in this context, I'm not really doing much with the camera, but I'm doing a lot with my body. So I'm holding my breath and I'm trying to position right, and I'm swimming at this angle, and I'm like really getting in close to the plants to take these intimate portraits, right? So all the pictures I chose for this show are quite intimate and meant to be portraits in some ways of the life there. There are pictures where it could be zoomed out, but then it looks a lot more sort of biological and documenting in a sciencey kind of way, and that's not the intention of what we're doing here. So so the practice is much more somatic and much more physical, and sort of my body becomes the camera, but also all of the other elements are co-creating with me, right? So as a photographer, I'm not the only one in charge, and often I'm not the one in charge at all. It's sort of like, what does this world want to share with me today? Or what does this world want to communicate with me today? And I'm simply there to sort of take those notes and then carry those notes away and be a bit of a messenger.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that behind the scenes look. Next up, we've got a piece from Axel that we're going to have a look at. Awesome. Yeah, Axel, could you please tell us about this work?
Yeah, happy to do so. First thing I noticed, it's so interesting. The judging submission committee, or what they are called, I don't know what the official name is, the people who chose JanaLee and me and put together these images, they did such a great job, because when you see the exhibition, the work works together so well on one hand, and on the other hand, when I hear JanaLee's story, it's interesting that the way the work has been created can't be more different. JanaLee just told us, which is very interesting, that she had, of course she didn't have much control over what gets photographed, because she's in this lake, she's dependent on the environment, moving subjects. And my work is the total opposite. Everything has been created in the studio, and I had 100% control over everything. But the outcome, these two bodies of work so well together. That's really amazing to me. A little bit about this photograph. As I mentioned earlier, per se, I'm a black and white photographer. And I never had the desire to create color work. I went even that far that I used dedicated black and white camera, a monochrome camera. The sensor doesn't even record color. So 90% of my photographs I've been taken, I won't be able to see them in color like a black and white film. If you take a photo with a black and white film, it's on the film, you develop it, you print it, but you can never get it in color. Of course, you can do AI stuff. I don't think that's appropriate here. You have it in black and white, you cannot see it in color. That's the situation I was in all the time. But then at one point, I was working with a gallery in Calgary. They wanted big prints. And when I say big, I mean really big prints. At least, let's say, 60 by 90 or 80 by 120 or so. And my camera at the time, the monochrome camera, had 24 megapixels. I don't go too much into the detail here, the technical ones. But the camera wasn't, let's put it that way, wasn't good enough for these big prints. You can get away with 30 by 45, something like that, with a 24 megapixel if you work some magic in the printing, but not 50 by 70 or 70 by 100 or so. So I bought a different camera, a new camera, and I bought a medium format camera. But medium format camera doesn't come with a black and white sensor. They only come with a color sensor. So I had the typical situation in which I would say 99% of all photographers are, even if they do black and white work, they take a color photo and then they convert it in software to black and white. I had to do that from that point on, when and if I used that camera. I did already in the past a series about flowers in black and white, because what I like with black and white work is the shapes, the forms, the texture, the shadows, the light, the contrast. That's really my thing. So these flower images are exactly that. Stephen, you know one of my images, the daisy, right? The withered daisy. I have a whole series of those. And I wanted to do something with fruits and vegetables and started in black and white. But to be honest, I couldn't really make it work. I didn't like what I did. The outcome wasn't really convincing to me. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, you have a color photo. What happens if you look at the same image in color, which I did. And then I thought, oh, those are nice colors. And it all started with the other image in the show, the pear. And the pear is, when you have the pear in black and white, it's just boring. At least I couldn't make it work. I don't know why. So even with a dark background and more lighting and blah, 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 it didn't work. So I looked at it in color. And I thought, it's nice in color, but something is missing. You have to do something with that pear. So I moved the pear a little bit, made a motion. Then I did a double exposure, and then I did some different lighting, and at the end, and did some work on the computer as well. I have to admit that. So at the end, what came out is the pear, which is now in the exhibition. And when I saw that photograph or image, I thought, oh, it's worth to try it with different fruits. So I did tomatoes, and I did shallots, and I did grapes, which I wasn't so convinced about. But at the end, what I liked most was the artichoke, and in particular this one, because this is kind of bluish or purple. And I like that kind of color, and I like the contrast with the brown. And whereas the pear is a little bit more simple. It's just the pear with some motion movement and with a little bit overlay from the double exposure. This one is one step further. It has these painterly strokes on the right-hand side, and on the opposite, on the left top corner, it has these little, I don't know how to call it. I wouldn't even know in my mother tongue how to call it, but I think those are the blossoms in the middle, these purple little things. I call it blossoms. I don't know if it's blossoms, but you all know what I mean. And I I photographed them a little bit differently, and I magnified them and put them in the left top corner, and a little bit strokes there as well, painterly. And at the end, I think I liked it, and so I made not six of these ones, but 6 different ones, and those are the only 6 color photos I do have. I don't have more than this 6. So if you had asked me, can I have 8? I would have said, no, you cannot have 8. I don't have 8. I have only these 6. I don't know if I do more, maybe, probably. I'm just starting a totally different project about, I told you about that, Stephen, about cinemas and theaters and historic and iconic places, venues here in Vancouver. My first idea was, of course, to do it in black and white. I already shot about 6 or 7 different venues by now, but I'm not quite sure anymore if I do it in black and white. I might even do it. I shot it intentionally. I shot it with the color camera. So I have the option to do it in color, and maybe I do it in color. I don't know. So long story short, this is not a project which I sat down and thought, oh, I want to do this project. No, it happened more or less by accident because I was playing around. I was not satisfied with the outcome of black and white. I went to color, played around, and at the end, I liked it. And now you can say, is it art? Is it an artistic approach that something comes out of, let's say, an accident or just playing around? I would say yes. First, I wasn't quite sure, but at the end, when I thought about it, I think yes, because the process of creating art means also to try and experiment with different things, and even if you don't know where it's going to and what the end result will be. That's the story of this image and the entire series. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Axel. It's interesting, this talk of experimentation, which I think really is, a fundamental part of creating and art making. But it's also interesting because if I told someone, oh, here's some still lifes of some fruits and vegetables, I don't think most people might necessarily see that because there's this beautiful alien quality that you've been able to capture with these subjects that kind of makes them unreal and unrecognizable as what they are.
Yeah, they are a little bit almost, I don't want to be, I try to be humble, but it looks a little bit like impressionistic, right? A little bit. So it goes away from reality. Mm-hmm. And what I always do, and I do that with all my work, be it architectural or be it flowers, landscape is a little bit different. I try to focus on details, on the overlooked beauty of some things when I photograph a building. Of course, I have a lot of photographs, just the entire building, but many are just parts of the building, sometimes abstract and not even recognizable. Is it a part of a building or what is it? It's abstract. And here I think that comes out too, this focusing on details and make it a little bit away from reality serial.
And you had said it was a little bit by accident that you ended up doing the vegetables and the fruits. Was there anything more beyond just wanting to try something different, or was there a certain reason you wanted to use these as your subject?
Yeah, because I did a lot of flowers, and I did probably most of the flowers you can get here in our area and at the flower shop. And then I was with my wife grocery, and I looked at the produce and at the veggies, and I thought, oh, that might be interesting. And I started with a pear, and then I went to the other stuff.
Sounds like you're always keeping your eye out for something that might be interesting, something that might be a really cool subject.
Right. That's same. I mean, I think every photographer does that. If you walk the streets from Vancouver, whatever city, your eyes and your mind is open. You look at this, you look at that, and sometimes I'm standing there and photographing something, and people pass by and they look at me, and then they look at the subject, and they cannot figure out what is he photographing there, because they don't see it, right? They don't see it. And that's important to me. I mean, JanaLee, your work, no one would have seen that. People who are swimming, people who are diving, I think they wouldn't have paid attention like you did about all the details and the different shapes and the different reflections. And I think that's part of being a photographer, or maybe in the broader sense, being an artist.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Axel. I tend to agree with that. I think that what's present actually at the heart of both of what we're doing is a way of seeing, right? Or in a way of seeing the world and what might be there. And what I love about your still lifes is that also you've given them motion, right? In the way that you've added the light afterwards. So
Yeah.
the artichoke is in motion and it's doing something and it's having a life and it's making a statement in the world. And same with the tomatoes, right? Like they're there, but they have distinct character, and you've managed to see that and draw that out, even if not necessarily with the camera. If you're doing something with the computer afterwards, like you're actually receiving the character of these things in a certain way and amplifying it, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's both. It's being taken the right photo, having the right light, and merging photos in post and doing something there as well. Yeah.
You for sharing. We have another comment from someone watching. Amar says, the centrality of the object is fascinating. In the idea of interconnections, do you see interacting parts within or around the object, or both? I don't know if any of you want to touch on that.
It's a complicated question. Axel, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I think if I got the question correctly, I would say no, not these objects or subjects. They are really stuck in their little bubble. So I don't see interconnection. Maybe I got the question wrong. If I did, I apologize. I don't see any interaction of this little fruit or veggie with the broader world. Of course, you can say we shouldn't take everything for granted, and we should look at the details. Yes, if you say that, it's connected to the world. And you could also say, don't only look at the surface, don't only look what you see in the first place, look deeper. That would be for me a connection with the world as well. But in the first place, it's a kind of bubble where I created that, and it's up to the viewer to make this connection to whatever he thinks it's connected to. I don't know if that answers the question, but I did my best.
I appreciate the answer, and thank you for being willing to go first. I also really appreciate the question. I think it's a really beautiful question. I would say, yeah, so I think that the things that I'm taking pictures of, yes, I mean, I would say that they're subjects more than objects, because I think they have their own distinct particular lives that they're living, but they're living lives in relation to other elements or other things. So they're living lives in relation to sun, water, fish, salamanders, me. And I'm living my life in relation to these things, but also to a human community, right? And so I think that there are multiple webs of connection happening and sort of layers. It's almost like when you drop a stone into water and there are these ripples that are happening and there's these resonances that are happening. I often feel like I'm kind of going underwater and trying to capture the resonance or the harmony or the sort of unseen relationships between things. And they're there, they may be subtext. It's not actually sort of the sharpest thing I'm trying to show. There's on my website, there's a little interesting section called surface tension. And I show sort of what happens when I think about you could think about it as a mistake, although I think they're all very beautiful. What happens when you sort of like accidentally get above the surface as well, and you've got all this white overexposed surface, and then you've got some things beneath the surface, and there's lots of things that happen all the time when I'm taking photos that sort of don't create the perfect image or object. And I would say that I don't really think about them as objects. So actually, when we were having these conversations about selling them, I sort of ethically reacted or philosophically reacted because I was like, they're not objects or sort of commodities to sort of like enter into that way. They're actually in relation. I want them to have a social dimension and a social relationship with the viewer, right? So it's really wonderful when I saw someone looking at them the first day that we hung them, and they're like walking right in there, looking at the details and like very close up to the picture, kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And so if it's eliciting that response or that social dimension or that layer of connection, then it's done its work. And so it's not an object, actually it's creating a new form of relationship, and it's bringing us back to something I think inside ourselves as well as human beings that is nice to sort of connect with. So it's also connecting us to ourselves in a different way. So yes, webs of interconnection, each is an individual entity, but they have resonances. Or I think about it like a concert hall. There's a violin and there's a cello, and they're playing and they're making music together, and I'm capturing the music somehow visually in this context.
Yeah, and connections is what art is there for. As you both have mentioned, you're eliciting reactions from the viewer, so people get to experience. And it might not be anything what you had intended when you were making it, but that's kind of the wonderful thing about art.
Yeah, it's a wonderful discovery process. And so it's also, for me, every time someone walks in front of it, it's a rediscovery process. And I love that too. So I'm actually very excited to just sit and watch people walk by the pictures and see if they stop or they don't stop, right? It's just a sort of process of discovery and sort of charting what happens to their life in the world. And I hope they have lives in the world beyond me.
That's the best part of an exhibition, right? Seeing that people look at your work and being happy if they like the work. And even if they don't like it, if you get a reaction, that's always good. That's a difference to social media, right? If you post it, maybe you get some likes. Yeah, what does that mean? No, for me, the fun is exactly what JanaLee said. In an exhibition, you have people looking at your work, and you can talk to them. They have questions, and to interact. That's the fun part. And if they buy a piece, it's not about the money you get for it. It's about knowing that that person is willing to spend money for something you did, and they hang it in their office, they hang it in their living room, and it's hanging there. I mean, if I knew, I would give it for free. But if something is free, people take it, right? So, and then you don't know if they really like it. And that wouldn't be satisfying either if they just take it and then they put it in their basement somewhere or in their storage, right? But knowing that people like your work and put it on the wall somewhere, I really like that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and everyone watching, please go and look at the artwork and see if you like it. See what the reactions it elicits in you. Beyond Botanical is on display at the Meek Arts Center until May the 18th. If you want to know more about the Meek and what they do and where to find them, there's links in the description of this video. There's also links to our fantastic artists' websites there, so you can see what they're up to, follow them, and see what's going on with them and their work. So just a big thank you to, pardon, Axel?
Interrupting. If you have questions, the audience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a website. I have a website, so you can contact us. There are submission forms, and shoot us an email, and we definitely will respond.
Exactly. Perfect. So yeah, so I think that's gonna wrap up our conversation. It was really great hearing from both of you. It's been really fascinating, and thank you to everyone who tuned in and watched this live and said hello and asked questions. And thanks to everyone who's going to watch this again later. And a big thank you to everyone at the Meek Arts Center for working with us here at the Arts Council to be able to present exhibitions like Beyond Botanical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
a
please
big
go
thank
check.
you to our curator, Stephen,
Oh,
who has been patient and done all the unglorious and important and glorious, I think, actually, work behind the scenes to make this happen, from hanging and positioning and repositioning and printing cards and dealing with rogue artists who weren't sure they wanted to sell their work or not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So both you and Manzari have been really wonderful to work with. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
And we're very lucky to have the Meek as a space. If anyone hasn't been there, it's a stunning space in Vancouver that
yeah.
deserves to be well known and put on the map. There's wonderful programming there beyond the art, and what a really cool space to get to show art in. Actually, like as soon as I knew that art was going in there, I was like, wow, actually, this is an invitation to play with scale in terms of photographs. How often do you get to show big pieces of work? So next time I want to see if I can make them even bigger. Axel, I may need some coaching about that, because I think photography does hit limits. But
Excellent.
sorry, Stephen, I stole your last word. I didn't.
No, that's great.
So thank you. This is a really wonderful ongoing process. West Vancouver Arts Council does really great stuff. I'm so thrilled to be part of the community. I'm thrilled that Axel is part of the community, and I hope there's lots more community to be had.
Yeah. Thank
Always.
you for your kind words, and thank you to Stephen as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, big hands of applause up to our fantastic artists, Axel Breutigam and JanaLee Cherneski, for sharing insights into who they are as artists, insights into their process, and for sharing their work with us, because that's what's important, is being able to experience these different points of view and finding the beauty that's out there. So thank you all very much, and I hope you've all enjoyed this conversation. And please, yeah, go check out Beyond Botanical at the Meek until May 18th. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. That was great.
Are we done? Thank you. That was great.